Howdy, folks. I'm Ross Weaver. I'm back to talk about Death Stranding 2. The new trailer released over the weekend. I know people were probably expecting a video from me. Here it is. I have a regular job. I can't just do this stuff anytime I want. So this is the first chance I had to sit down and properly make notes. I've been thinking about it for a few days. Before I get into this, I want to say I've made 2 videos previously on this subject, on Death Stranding 2 trailers. I did one about a year ago after the second trailer released. It was just a bunch of my initial reactions to it. And it's a pretty long video. But I also did one about 7 months ago, making a bunch of predictions about what this game's story would have in it. And I'll get into it, but a lot of the stuff I said in that video has turned out to probably be mostly true. If not, all of it is pretty much right on the money. Maybe not right on the money, but I'm onto some stuff here, y'all. And I'm going to go over it here, but with all this said, maybe you want to go back if you haven't seen those videos yet. Check them out first. I know it's a couple hours worth of video, but there's a lot of stuff in those first trailers that I cover in that first video, and in the second video, well, there's a lot of stuff from this trailer that I covered, and I'm going to get back into it here, but I've got about 3 pages of notes, so this might be a little bit of a long video. So this isn't going to be just a quick initial reaction video. This is my breakdown, my analysis of what all I think is going on with this trailer. Strap in, folks. This one's going to be a ride. So, the first scene. Let's Neil is our new guy, new Luca Marinelli, new character. His name's Neil. He's sitting across from this suit, and they're arguing about. Sounds like Neil's being forced into doing something that he doesn't like, but because of his criminal history and past, they're probably holding some kind of a threat over his head and forcing him to do this. And we find out in the next scene what that is, but before I get there, this first scene is a big old homage to The Matrix. If you've ever seen the movie, which I'm hoping most of you have, if you haven't, what are you doing? Go watch. Watching The Matrix is way more important than listening to me right now. Go watch that movie. In the original Matrix, before Neo even really wakes up, when he's still Mr. Anderson, he gets picked up by the agents and brought in. He tries to escape, and Morpheus tries to lead him away, but he ends up getting caught. And he gets brought into this interrogation room with Agent Smith. And if you notice the way that Luca and this other character are shot across the table from each other, they're in exactly the opposite positions that Neo and Agent Smith were in, relative to the camera. Now, assuming the camera's kind of in the same spot in the room, the camera hasn't moved. The table is in the same spot relative to the camera, you could say, and they're shooting across the table, looking at Luca's right side, and this suit's left side. In The Matrix, they're shooting at Neo's left side and Agent Smith's right side. So there's a little bit of a switcheroo going on between Luca, let's get to it in the future. We know he's a snake. Our new snake guy is sitting in the spot that the Smith was sitting in. And the guy sitting in Neo's spot is this suit, which, how does that make sense? Well, obviously, this new snake guy is being made to do the dirty work of the system. And that's what the agents did in The Matrix. The Oracle explains it in Reloaded, I believe it is, that because of the past versions of The Matrix and the nature of the program world, the machine world, and let's say entities existing within the Matrix that aren't really supposed to be there, the agents, that's their normal work, is to go get the stuff that's not supposed to be in the Matrix and get it out. And in a sense, that's kind of the machine world's dirty work, because the fact that there even is this stuff that needs to be gotten rid of, and it involves kind of ferrying, let's say, bodies across borders. That's what's going on here. It's the same story, but we know Neil, he's Neo. because the name Neil and the name Neo have way too much in common. It sounds almost the same. You can kind of slur the end of Neil to make it kind of sound like Neo if you've got a certain accent, which I might know about. And Neil itself, I think the name just off the top of my head made me think of Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. So possibly there could be a little bit of a moon kind of thing going on here. Maybe somehow Neil's going to help us get into space, and maybe he's going to be somehow, our first guy on the moon. I don't know, maybe. And I also kind of wanted to note in this scene between Neil and this suit, they kind of share the relationship that Campbell and Snake shared at the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 1, when Campbell's kind of telling Snake he has no choice but to do this because of all the crimes of his past and stuff like that. So in a way, this suit's a lot like Campbell. But also, even more than that, this guy's not really like Campbell because he's not wearing military dress, right? He's a businessman-looking guy. Well, if you've played Metal Gear Acid or Metal Gear Acid 2, you know both of those games star Solid Snake, and both of them feature this guy in a suit basically telling this Solid Snake that he has no choice but to go do what their whole mission is for him, because the choices otherwise would be, catastrophic to his life. It's like, you don't have a choice, right? So this Smith suit guy is kind of another Campbell, kind of another, let's say an agent of Cypher, maybe, I suspect he's working for Bridges. He was probably having... It may not have been Bridges. It may have been some other organization. That I'll get into it here in a little bit. But the chiral network may not be exactly what we're seeing operated with all the servers on the beach, which that's another thing we'll get to here in a minute. But I question whether this is the chiral network or if this is APAS's network that we were seeing. That this guy might be more of a representative of APAC. Might not be Bridges. You know what I mean? APAC might be like Bridges, maybe not competitor, but more like their counterpart elsewhere in the world, But anyways, that's enough. That's the first scene. Let's move on. The second scene in this trailer is about Neil and Lucy, and that's when we get the explanation that he's smuggling still mothers, brain dead pregnant women across the border, and I'll get into it, but it's being done to facilitate connections to the beach. They need these still mothers to connect to the beach because of the nature of them being kind of caught on the border between life and death. It's the same reason, the same principle behind why they were using BBs to do what they do in Death Stranding, but ethics are a little different. We'll get into it. So this scene is probably not happening as like a sequel to what we've seen in Death Stranding 1 between Neil and Lucy. This is probably prequel material. This is probably stuff that happened in the past because we know Lucy's dead. Spoiler alert. You can find out in the journals that you can unlock in the post-game of Death Stranding that Lucy and Sam were together at some point in the past, and they had a child named Lou. And Lucy committed suicide, and the BT that was created from that created a matter-antimatter reaction, voided out the area, and killed Lucy and, destroyed her body and then killed their baby, too. I believe the baby wasn't born yet, too. She was still pregnant, but she was very pregnant. And she did this, it was a suicide. She did this on purpose. We find out it's all this stuff in the journals, and this is probably the same Lucy. So because this is probably Sam's Lucy, this is probably what happened to Lucy before she got with Sam. She was probably with Neil. And some people were predicting that Neil and Lucy had a baby, and that's why Neil's going out and doing all this stuff. That could be possible, but it also doesn't appear that Neil and Lucy had a baby. From what it looks like, I think it looks like they didn't have a baby. Or maybe that the baby they had was stillborn or something like that. Because there's a scene between them, that starts out with them talking in their room together, and then it kind of cuts, and it's the two of them talking across each other up at the table. She throws this tablet out that's got these images of what looks like a very partially developed fetus, a very small BB, you might say. Sort of a proto-BB maybe even. But it could also feasibly be maybe her child that they tried to have together possibly, didn't develop all the way and maybe had to be aborted or something like that. And that's what we're seeing here, right? Um, I know that's kind of horrific, but there's probably natural causes, chiralium or something involved that they didn't understand at the time that probably led her to say, our relationship was a mistake because we just can't have a baby together. And that's probably why Neil says it was not a mistake. Now, this word mistake has come up before. In Death Stranding, if you remember, when Amelie or Bridget, whoever you want to call her, is giving the explanation for why all this is going on, at one point she explains when Cliff and Sam were shot with that bullet from the gun that Die Hardman was holding and she pulled the trigger on, she says she instantly recognized it as a mistake. Okay? So this idea of a mistake, it doesn't jive with me totally. I don't totally get it, but I'm following it a little bit here. Bridget says that, her shooting Sam and Cliff like she did was instantly recognized as a mistake, and that's what motivated her to do what was next, is repatriate Sam, essentially. But in a sense, if Bridget really is Amelie, and she's kind of the EE, and she has this, let's say, overarching knowledge of the future because of her link to the beach and her dreams being what they are and everything, it's like she's kind of told us she already knows what's going to happen. She knows time. She sees it all. So how could she make a mistake? How is that possible? And I think it reveals the lie in that Bridget really wasn't the EE. Bridget was linked to the EE, but Bridget herself and Amelie are a little bit different. You see, Amelie is the image of Bridget, but Bridget herself is not the entirety of the entity of the EE, essentially. I think Bridget is an aspect of the EE, and the EE is a larger entity that Amelie herself is more linked to. But we don't really, we don't see anything about Amelie and Bridget here, so I think we're meant to make these connections here with this word mistake and Lucy, because we know Lucy's linked to Bridget. Lucy and Sam were put together by Bridget, and the way Lucy acts, at the end of her life in her journals, I think kind of likens her a little bit to Amelie, doing these mysterious actions that seem to have no motivation, but she says they're very important. That's Amelie talk. That's EE talk to me. So I think Lucy's got a lot of a link to the EE stuff that we'll get into more. And then finally, I kind of skipped over this, but the last line in that first half of the scene between Neil and Lucy, as he says he's being forced to bring these bodies over from Mexico. I said Mexico. I said that's where we're going first, and we've already got another link to Mexico. So I was probably right about the whole Mexico and South America thing. We'll get back to it. I'm going to try not to gloat too much, y'all, but oh my God. I can't believe this shit. So, and then, the third scene cuts to a shot of Sam and Lou. And the one thing of note here is that when Sam stands up, he's wearing this nice duster jacket. And it's not brown, it's gray. But it's the father trench coat that I've talked about in the past. It's all throughout Kojima's past works. It's in Snatcher. I think it's in Police Knots. It's in pretty much every Metal Gear game. Maybe it isn't in Metal Gear 1. I'm pretty sure he slipped it into 2 somewhere, I think. The trench coat, him wearing this duster now, and this being like his first real scene as a father, I think that kind of confirms this coat links to fatherhood. All right, and then after that, this whole section, by the way, I'm calling this Chapter 1, these first scenes. There's the scene with Neil and Smith, and then Neil and the 2 scenes really with Neil and Lucy that are cut together, and then this scene with Sam and Lou. And that kind of tells one story a little bit, kind of our prologue, kind of our intro, but it's Chapter 1. And then we get into the meat of the stuff, and then we got a series of lots of stuff, lots of text on the screen, lots of cutting. So, y'all, I've got notes. I'm just going to go through them one at a time. It's not necessarily going to be exhaustive. I'm not going to cover everything in that sequence, but these are the things that stick out to me. I could talk all day about this stuff. If I really got into what was going on here, you wouldn't believe me. So we're just going to stick with, let's try to keep our feet on the ground kind of stuff first before we start flying. So the first shot that I've got here is there's the servers on the beach in the Ring of Kaz. So if you're not sure as to what that shot is showing, on the beach there, that's sort of, in the future, right? They've set up these servers. Each one of those servers is processing data, and it's sending the data back to the past to be, read by whoever's requested it. And this, it's like time travel. It skips processing time, so stuff there's no latency and all this stuff happening to people back in reality. The connection to each one of these servers on this beach is mediated by one of those Kas. That's what those are, the ring of souls in the air. Those are people's Kas. And these Kas are showing up as Kas on the beach. They're not actually the people on the beach because the person, him or herself, themselves, is still alive. There's somebody who is being kept on the verge of life and death, probably something like still mothers, a brain-dead person who's, got a connection to the beach, maybe a brain-dead pregnant woman specifically. And by keeping them alive in the real world, their Ka shows up on the beach as this BT. And by this Ka being on the beach and their body still being alive in the real world, they can set up stuff probably in the coffin around the body to read and send data to and from the beach. So this is probably how not only it may not be how the chiral network works, but this is definitely how the APAS network works, because that's the next shot we see is the APAS network. All the deliveries have been automated. And this logo, this image that we see of the APAS network is in the shape of a human brain. So it's telling us that these bots that are running everywhere, we may think that they're AI, right? And they've got onboard programming and makes them do all this stuff. I don't think they are AI. I think there's actually human souls, human brains, probably these still mothers and others even possibly, that are being kept sort of unconscious, and their Ka and Ka is separate. And through this, they're able to use the brains as circuitry to run these bots. So it's not really AI, it's human brains. They're going to probably call it AI and explain it via, it's all this, complicated computing that's happening on the beach. But the big secret, I think, is that there's not actually a whole lot of computing happening. I think it's basically just sending so like, for example, if a bot is being told to go from here to there, that person, the Ka, is probably being fed, this path essentially, and being made to think that they're walking on this path. And so their normal walking it's probably like in some kind of a virtual reality type deal. And, they're walking along this path is probably what's actually giving this bot motion and a path and its programming and everything. And I think that's I think how APAS works. I think they have to have the servers on the beach for all of this to work. I'm not sure if that's how the chiral network totally operates, though. The chiral network may not require a still mother or a person kept on the verge of life and death. It may be able to use objects, because I think it gets down to the Cupid. We know that the core thing to make the chiral network come online is this Cupid. And I think somehow they figured out a way for the chiral network to operate to mediate this connection without using people's living souls, essentially, and holding people in kind of a digital prison in order to mediate this connection across time. I think APAS is doing that, but I don't think the chiral network was doing that or is doing that. I think the chiral network works by a direct connection to the beach via objects, and we know there's BB pods that are involved, and a lot of people say that there's BBs in there, but I don't actually think there's BBs. I think the BBs have been incinerated and the BB pods are kept, and because of the BB's time in the pods, a connection between the beach and the pod remains. It's like the pod becomes sort of a totem, and I think that those pods being left in spots once you bring the Cupid into the equation, I think it allows them somehow to essentially forge a connection between the beach and stuff that happened in the past, in a sense. The life has sort of already been lived by the BB, so the BB's life doesn't need to continue in the pod. I think this relates to how the BB pod that we see in Death Stranding 2's trailers has this octopus and this chiral image of a BB in it. I think after a BB's left the pod, a connection to that pod remains because of their time in the pod and memories created that aren't really maybe kept, but they have to be sort of alive on the beach in a way, because everything that happens in reality happens on the beach. It gets into Death Stranding's world's whole thing. I don't need to explain it all here, but that's basically what's going on. Is APAS is using people instead of whatever the chiral network is using to mediate these connections between the present time and the beach in the future. And I think that's going to be part of the core struggle in Death Stranding 2 is, this idea of we should not have connected gets to how, people's lives are being held in the balance for basically for society to continue to function, which isn't really right. That we kind of recognize there's a karmic imbalance in that, with people who have their will taken away, being used for everybody else, while people just don't really care. You see what I'm saying? There's just an inherent inhumanity in that whole equation that's going to have to be approached in this game's narrative. So, with that said, the next shot is the Plate Gate. Now, I was talking about this is the big bridge in the desert. I think that's the Plate Gate. If I had to guess, it's probably connecting North America and South America. They're talking about the continents and maybe teasing that we're going to go to Europe and Asia and Africa. I don't think we are. I think that the two continents that we're going to be dealing with are North America and South America. And then there's a shot of the Magellan there. Oh, and then we see this quick shot of Fragile with the Magellan in the air and this corpse. And I'm pretty sure the corpse is of the Fatih Akin character, which we'll see later. I think that's where she picks up Dollman. I think they showed up there having read a corpse, maybe some chiral activity or something, expecting to need to take a corpse to be incinerated, and probably surprisingly found that this corpse doesn't need to be incinerated. There's no risk of a void out, because I think instead of a BT forming, I think the BT basically ensconced itself in this doll. I think that's kind of what happened. And so the doll kind of is the BT. But since it's not a BT, it's not made of antimatter, right? It's a physical object. I think the same rules don't apply. And I think that gets back into how I was talking about you can create a link between a physical a thing and a place, a physical object and a place, if there's meaning there, and if a person dies in that spot. So take that as you will for Bridges, what Bridges originally did to set up the chiral network. There may have been some, like we say, sacrifices in the foundations of the bridge, but I'll get into it later. It gets into quokkas. These deaths may not have been murders. These deaths may have been unavoidable deaths. These may have been doomed children, babies who would have otherwise been aborted, whose lives were extended artificially via the BB treatment, and then they were taken to a certain spot to be put to rest, which was going to happen anyways, you see. Some people may see that as unethical, but that I think that's what we're zoning in on here. That it seems like the way these shelters work is a BB pod was probably brought there with a BB that was, probably past, at its decommission point, essentially. And the BB was either then allowed to die, nature was allowed to take its course, or possibly maybe they just took the BBs out of their pod and allowed the BB to have a chance at survival itself, and maybe that pod being left there is all that's needed to facilitate the connection. So, what's next? We see a shot of Sam in this ritual circle, surrounded by all the guys in red. And, I could probably say a lot about it, but The one thing I do want to say is the desert is the ocean. He's standing in water. And we also see these red guys out in the desert. So the desert is the ocean. Okay. The next thing we see is this image of, I'm calling it a tar wall. It's a tar wall. It's a big wall of tar. It's rising up to the sky. It looks like it's blocking out access to this whole area. It may not actually be doing that. It may be a trick of the light. It may be that the tar is just capturing all the light from that area and not allowing it out, and we just can't see it. There's some kind of a warping of space anomaly happening if there's high amounts of chiralium in the environment in certain forms, which in the next shot we see, it appears to be Sam underwater with these white floaty dust particles around. And it looks like it's underwater, but I don't think it is. I think it's actually in an area that we'll end up going to where there's an extremely high kind of chiral density that's probably a specific kind of chiral anomaly where there's a whole lot of particulate matter that's mostly invisible, but it's very dense and it's filling up this area. It's like I was saying with the lensing effect, which we'll get back to here in a little bit. But the lensing effect, having a bunch of invisible stuff in the environment and the atmosphere that's causing the moon to look bigger, that may be also what's happening down here in this underwater-looking area. Okay? And then about this point in the trailer, the Woodkid song comes up. The lyrics of the Woodkid song come up. But the song itself has been going this whole trailer, if you pay attention. And if you go listen to the song on YouTube, there's the full song that's been posted. The first lyrics we hear in the trailer are not the first lyrics of the song. There's about a whole, I would call it a verse worth, or a couple of verses worth that are cut from this song. So we just hear the instrumental of the song in the beginning. And then the first words that come in are, to all the roads we have yet to pave. Which I think, that carries a lot of meaning. Death Stranding, the fans loved paving the roads. Like, I think, when they made Death Stranding, they probably weren't sure how people were going to react to making the roads because there's so much work involved in collecting all the materials and it requires a group effort, but the roads are great, right? And people ended up loving them and loving the activity of doing all the stuff to make the roads with other people. And I loved logging back into Death Stranding and seeing all the likes that you accrue from helping build the roads. And, I work in highway construction. My family's business since 1960 has been to build roads. So I think it's cool. I think it's neat. I think that's a good lyric to come in on. And then we see a lot of walking. We see Sam doing a whole lot of walking. And I don't know if it's just me, but those areas look like it could easily be Mexico and South America. If we put it all together, I think it may be what I was saying in the last video. They may have taken some geography from other places and used it to represent Mexican and South American cartography. But these places look like he's doing a lot of walking in let's say arid regions, jungle regions a little bit, some coastal stuff here and there. There's a little bit of a frozen thing, which the way it's cut in makes it appear that it's up north possibly with, this first area, but it may be something later in the game, further in the southern parts of South America where it gets pretty cold. But yeah, that's all the notes I have for Chapter 1. So now I'm going to move on here to Chapter 2. So the next scene is it's really about Fragile, and we see her, the crash essentially. And again, this crash is the same thing as the ambulance crash at the end of the Phantom Pain's intro in Mission 46. You're running away from this place in a vehicle with somebody in tow, and something from behind takes us down, or something surprises us, and then this masked figure shows up. Now, in the Phantom Pain, it's Ocelot who shows up to take Ishmael away. But here, I just want to say this character that comes up also has some relations to Ocelot. And that's why I think in the previous trailer, Sam thought it was Higgs. I think we all maybe thought it would be Higgs. And this character does have relations to Ocelot, but it's not Ocelot. It's like I said in the last video, This is the man on fire. This is our new Volgan. This person who shoots Fragile, and I'll get to it, but yes, she is shot. He's our new man on fire. He's this. We'll get to it. He's gonna be one of our. He's gonna be an antagonist for this game, though. So get ready. But one thing, people were questioning is, what does happen in that scene where she tries to jump Lou away and can't? Do they both get shot? What, does she jump Lou away? Well, we saw in the previous trailer, after she appears to get shot, I said she wakes up on the beach with all the flames around her and sees Lou there on the beach, and Lou appears to not be alive. And then she passes out. So I think that means they both get shot. It appears that she's got her head to Luis's head. She's trying to teleport Luis away. And if you look very closely and pause the video right there, you'll see Luis is crying tar tears. Before Fragile even tries to teleport Lou away, a black tear falls on the side of Lou's eye. And then as she tries to teleport Lou, the strings appear. Okay, y'all? So those were probably already there and were probably there the whole time. Fragile probably couldn't teleport Luis away because she was blocked. And I think she was blocked because I think Luis possibly blocked herself. In any case, somebody else may have blocked her too, but in any case, the tar tear appearing before they are shot indicates that this is set in motion. Luis was already on the beach. This was not avoidable. This was not something Fragile had control over. And she's probably going to deal with a lot of internal stress and grief over letting this happen. And she's probably going to have to come to learn by the end of the game that this wasn't her fault, that there was more going on here than met the eye that she could have possibly known. This game was rigged from the start. It's like the beginning of Fallout New Vegas. There was no way to avoid this bullet. Because if she is shot with one bullet and Luis is also shot with the same bullet through the same kind of spot in their body, the same wound, well, this is just a replay of what happened to Cliff and Sam in the hospital that we see at the end of Death Stranding. Fragile and Luis are the new kind of version of Cliff and Sam in a sense. Okay, you following me? We also see in this scene that there are three figures in the distance when she crashes, and then there's this fourth figure that was out front waiting, that was there. Just seems like they knew she was going to crash right there. So this was a dirty black bag job. This was very, very dirty work, which I think already ties this act back to what Neil is being made to do. And the still mothers being ferried across borders, that's exactly what's happening to Fragile right here. She's kind of becoming the next connection in a sense. And so, like I said, it seems like this had to be done in a way. So the morality of this act, I would urge you to keep in mind the image of this act is awful, terrible act, but the morality of it may have more to do with the consequences, and this may be more of a magic trick. It may be better for you to think of this as a magic trick where, the magician catches a bullet or something like that, okay? But we do see in the next shot, after the crash and everything, Fragile's in this bed with the red light around her, and she has these patches on the sides of her arms with bruises that are consistent with the wounds that she would have received from tumbling in that fall. But there's one wound, right here, a bandage on her chest that's not consistent with any of the wounds we see her receive, except for if she got shot. So she was probably shot through the chest by someone from above, standing up, execution style, and that bullet would have passed through her chest and probably passed through Luis and killed them both, and took them both to the beach and tied them together. And you see what I'm saying? There's connections being made by this gun and this bullet. Okay? So, and again, this relates back to everything I said about the man on fire in the previous video that I made. Y'all, I know what's going on here. Y'all, you can stop questioning, okay? I'm on the trail. So let's go. And so the next part then is just another, just we're gonna call it a montage. It's not really a montage, but it utilizes montage style. It's quick cutting, and you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead. I've got this note from later in the middle of this section, but I'm just gonna say it now. Kojima in this section that's coming up here, and in the previous one where he did the quick cutting, but in these two sections, he's utilizing what I learned in film school as the Kuleshov effect. Lev Kuleshov was a Russian filmmaker a long time ago. He wrote about this effect from that occurs from when you cut two disparate images in sequence. One image and then another image, and then you cut back to the one image and then you cut to another image. The juxtaposition of otherwise unrelated images in this kind of a sequence implies in the viewer connections between those images. So even if they are unconnected in the filmmaker's mind and even in reality, the viewer, when seeing them together like this, will try to make connections. Okay? He's using the Kuleshov effect here to cut things that have connections next to each other. He's juxtaposing things that do have connections chronologically in order here. But some of them also aren't in order because, connections, it's like a web, right? It's not just one. Maybe you do follow one path through weaving a whole thing, but when you're done, it doesn't look like one path. It looks like a cloth or a shirt or something. You see what I'm saying? That's kind of what's going on here. He's weaving a little bit of a story by juxtaposing certain elements, by using the Kuleshov effect to imply things from one shot to be sort of applied over into this other shot. Okay, so take that in mind with you as we go along here. We've got bigger BTs already, so it's like I said, Higgs has got bigger BTs. He's found a way to make them bigger, and these are going to be the problem. I also want to go back to once Luis and Fragile are shot, it cuts immediately, using the Kuleshov effect, it cuts immediately to BB, or Luis, in her crib. Okay? So it's implying that she's asleep. She's not really dead. She's just dreaming again, in a sense. It's like this place she goes to after she's shot is in her crib, okay? This crib is likened to a chrysalis. Sam enters this chrysalis-looking thing and gets sort of pulled up into blackness and nothingness. And we also see a BB doll in this golden-looking cocoon chrysalis thing. It turns its head and the eye opens and turns gold. So these are all related images. BB being shot and going to the beach is like dreaming, is like where metamorphosis happens in a chrysalis, okay? We also see what looks like one of the dolphin or octopus BTs, kind of a dolphin-octopus combo, from Death Stranding 1, that Sam's fighting, maybe on a beach, maybe it's just a BT boss fight, but it's got armor. So we've got armored up BTs, okay? I said that in the previous video too, so just if you're wondering why I'm saying it that way. And then at 4:55 in this trailer, if you go and pause it and catch this frame right exactly when this cut happens, it's after the octopus and the Sam shooting it back at it. It cuts to Sam sitting in this new vehicle that he's got on the road. It's nighttime scene, and it's Sam. You have to freeze frame it right at the cut, but you see it's Sam there, and he turns to his left and looks at more road in the background of the scene, and the camera does a snap zoom focus into the site he's looking at, which is, it looks like there's just one vehicle that's maybe a motorcycle that's riding on this road coming after him. And then it cuts immediately to this chase where it looks like it's Sam in this same vehicle with this this red bike coming after him. It looks like the red bike is being autonomously controlled. It doesn't appear to have a driver. It's probably Higgs on the beach driving it. He's controlling it via a ghost. And Sam's fighting it. So what's really happening there is we're probably seeing Sam's on this road, going along, and then he sees this. Oh, he's got a bogey on his tail, so he starts running from it, but it's smaller. It catches up to him, so he has to fight it. And so we're probably seeing the cut between the him spotting it and then the him fighting it. But because of the way it's cut, okay, we're getting into more Kuleshov effect stuff. Essentially, this is an extension of the Kuleshov effect, because we see Sam look over, and the camera zooms in, and then it cuts immediately to this shot where we didn't really get enough time after this snap zoom to establish that there was only one bike on this path trailing after us. Imagine in your head that that scene that we see in the cut is what Sam is looking at, okay? Sam's not looking back and seeing this thing trail after him, and then he goes off and it catches up to him. Sam's on his own up ahead of the path, and he looks back on the path and sees another Sam, another porter, who's being chased by this bike. Okay? In a sense, the cutting of this little small bit here, it's like 3 seconds. It happens from 4 minutes and 55 seconds to like 4 minutes and 58 seconds. But the implication of this cut is that there's multiple protagonists, is that Sam is looking at another Sam, another porter, who's having to deal with this. I think we're going to get Ryden again, y'all. I think at some point, or maybe even multiple points in this game, Sam is not going to be the protagonist. I'm going to get to it. I think at some point Sam's going to be like, I think we're going to think Sam's dead at some point, like dead, and not able to come back. Like he died on a beach and he's not able to repatriate. Kind of something's going to happen. Okay. That's a wild prediction, and I'm just going to make it and move on. Okay, so the next thing we see is the skull BT. The new BT he's fighting is this skull, and this, again, y'all, the head comes from Chico's head in PT and the PT teaser trailer, and the stuff I've been talking about in the Phantom Pain with Chico's head and the D Walker heads, this and the skulls and all of the relations between all of that. That's what this skull BT is. That's why it's here. And, it's got a snake's mouth. It's opening up in a weird way, right? That's not the way a human mouth opens. It does have a human lower jaw and teeth, but this part right here, that's how some reptiles and some snakes open their mouths. So we've got a human skull with a snake's mouth, and it's split down the middle. This is just, if you've listened to my lectures, you should know exactly what's going on there. It goes back to how I was saying, the hand was probably eaten by a BT, which made it into a hand. And we get a better look at the hand here. It's probably multiple hands. It looks like it's multiple hands that have been sort of superimposed on one another, and there's like a smaller hand within the bigger hand, but it's like 10 fingers coming out. Actually, I think it's only 8 fingers because I didn't see any thumbs. It's some freaky looking stuff, y'all. And, the missing thumbs thing, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The two things that make humans what we are as far as like our uniqueness is our large brain, but mostly it's our opposable thumbs. The opposable thumb is really what gave us a leg up on everything in evolution. It's what enabled us to become the king of the food pyramid, in a sense. The king, anyways, thumbs are important to evolution. So one of the things we see real quick that seems to not have a whole lot of importance, it's just like, why do we see this? We see this shot underwater with this circular rainbow lens flare, and it seems to have, I looked at it, it seems to have all the colors in that rainbow, and we see the 5 figures that we saw from Death Stranding in the background, and we also see the whale, and this is all underwater. It appears to be in the seam. Well, just to say it somewhere, because I've said it elsewhere, but I'll say it here, the 5 cause in the sky that we see here that's called back to Death Stranding, it's actually 6. People who, data mined and looked into it, you can use, I think it was photo mode, to zoom in on those figures on the beach. they're all literally models of Sam. They're all Sams. And the one in the middle is actually holding a BB in its arms. So the six figures are all symbolic relations or literal connections that other Kaws have to Sam's beach. And they are the six people that he connects with physically throughout that game. Obviously, he connects with BB at the end of the game. They touch physically. His aphenphosmophobia is happening because when he touches somebody, they will be connected to his beach. So he touches BB. BB's there. He touches Amelie at the end. He hugs her, so she's there. The figure in the middle, that's the Sam holding the BB, is actually Amelie's Kaw. We've seen the poster art of Amelie with the BB in her hand, in her arm, like the Madonna, the painting, the famous Christ reference and the Madonna, right? That's what the middle figure stands for. And the other four are Dead Man and Heart Man, the sort of male sides of him. And the other two, you can either interpret them as Mama and Lochna separately, but I actually don't think Mama and Lochna are just represented separately there. I think you could actually represent Mama and Lochna by just one of them there. And so you've got Dead Man, Heart Man, Amelie, BB, Mama and Lochna as one, and then the final one would probably be Die Hard Man, because they do actually physically touch. Die Hard Man reaches out and touches Sam in the ending. And I've been trying to think. I can't remember when Heartman touches Sam in Death Stranding, but I'm pretty sure he actually doesn't. And I think he doesn't do that because it implies they're going to touch at some point in the future, and probably in Death Stranding too. And that's how that connection's going to be forged. And that's probably why we see that shot of the five, let's call it the five figures and the whale in the seam with the rainbow lens flare. Those five connections, let's say the five, because he's kind of BB, but I think they're going to be replaced by other characters in this game. So the Amelie that was holding BB, which was really him in the previous game, is going to be Fragile holding Luis. It's the same thing probably. Heartman is still here, so Heartman's probably still Heartman. And then we've got Dead Man is not here. I mean, we hear him, but he's got to be replaced by somebody. So he's probably replaced by a combination of Tarman and Dollman, in the way that Mama and Lochna are two souls in one. I think Tarman and Dollman have a lot of relations. The way that Tarman's cat appears to kind of be a puppet, and a puppeteer using their hands, him missing his hand. I think there's going to be maybe some kind of a link between Tarman and Dollman that we'll find out by the end. And I think that's one of those five figures in this shot represent. And then the one that was Mama and Lochna, 2 in 1, probably is going to have relations to what is going on with Rainy and Tomorrow in this game. And so Rainy and Tomorrow's connection with Sam will probably be unified somehow via one spiritual connection to his beach. And then the last one, which is Die Hard Man, it's probably our snake. Probably Neil, actually. Neil might be linked to Sam. And I'll get into it here in a sec, but I'll get into it more, but let me just say it here. We know that Neil and Lucy were together, and Lucy and Sam were together, and Lucy was the mother of Luis, okay? Fragile was also the mother of Luis. So this links Lucy and Fragile together as both being mothers of Luis. And so this, by virtue of Neil and Lucy being together, Sam and Lucy being together, and Fragile and Sam being together, Neil and Sam are linked together, okay? So, after this shot in the water, though, we cut to Sam on top of the world. He's on top of this peak above the clouds where we can see the horizon, and he looks like he's reached some kind of a high point, right? Literally. I can relate to that. I think, and again, this is cooler. This is more Kuleshov effect. I don't need to go into it all the way, but this top of the world shot is happening right after the shot in the sea with the five figures there and the whale and the rainbow. Now, y'all, I didn't talk about the whale, but we're not going to talk about the whale. Moving on, this shot at the top of the world is then cut to the shot of Sam walking with this nebula out in the distance, kind of in the atmosphere. And then that's then cut to Sam walking with the big moon in the lensing effect. So the moon is the nebula, is the top of the world, is the scene. All four of these shots go together. The thing in the sky, the five figures in the whale, the nebula, the moon, it's all linked together symbolically via the Kuleshov effect. Hideo's doing this on purpose, y'all. This is not me interpreting this. I mean, yeah, it is me interpreting this, but I'm not able to interpret this by accident, and I'm not just forcing my will on this thing. These are things that I knew beforehand, and I recognize them. He's doing things, and these are what this is the meaning behind it. Is he's saying there's a link between the seam and the beach and the moon. Okay? Moving on, I said in the previous video also that we're going to see possibly some scenarios where we have to deal with enemies that are armored, where we have to use lethal weapons to knock off their armor and then switch to a non-lethal weapon so that we don't kill the person underneath. And of course, here we see Sam's shooting at what appear to be a kind of mule that has armor on. He's got a helmet on, and Sam's shooting at him in the head with a lethal assault rifle and knocking the guy's armor off. And he looks like he's doing it very carefully. I mean, y'all, can I call these things or what? And then we see there's a quick note here. I have we see a shot of a flashback of Sam, and he's looking at a body. And some people were predicting it's Lucy's body. I don't jive with that because Lucy's body was probably destroyed in the void out, according to the records. Now, the records may be wrong, but we have to go with the previous info that we have and assume that that's right. This shot of Sam looking at the body may not be Lucy, but I think they're kind of calling back to Sam's past and a dead body, making us think of Lucy for a good reason. And then we see the next shot, the next big one I think that I've written down is, it's a quick one. There's these two doctors in full hazmat gear in a white clean room environment that are taking a bandage off of the camera, the POV of the camera. Yo, this is just the beginning of the phantom pain. V has come to. I mean, come on. And then we see a sequence of all the characters and their title cards. And we see there's a new president. Well, this just relates back to what I was talking about. President Somoza has defected for no reason in the Phantom Pain. It seemed to make no sense. So this is President S, probably. This is literally Alastair Duncan was the voice actor who played Senator Armstrong in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. And I don't know if I've said it before, but Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is an alternate timeline where Solidus becomes Senator Armstrong. That's actually a different Solidus. And so this fight between Jack and Armstrong at the end of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is just another version of the fight at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 between Solidus and Raiden. It's literally just that same fight with turned up to 11 because it's the same guys. Okay, this president that we see here, this guy's probably related to George, to Solidus. So this president guy's probably related to Tarman because George. Okay. I also want to note they show us this looks like a crash test dummy that's animated, and they call it Charlie. That's a weird one. Looks like it's probably an AI that runs the ship. Okay, anyways. Deborah Wilson is playing the Doctor. She has two right hands. That's okay. If you've noticed, the glasses she's wearing, they're quite a bit like mine, but they're red frames on top of the lenses, and the bottom of the lens is opened and is exposed. There's no frame on the bottom of the lens. If you've played Metal Gear Solid 2, you should know these glasses. Those are the EE glasses. Those are Emmerich's glasses. Okay? So she's wearing the EE glasses in Death Stranding. Probably means her stuff and her workings and her hands and her story probably has links to EE, the extinction entity. Could also have, links to evolution, but I suspect, with the way her hand is shown to go through the outside of that BB pod, it turns into like a soup as she's kind of pushing through it. It seems that some kind of a chiral phenomenon is going on there, where, like if you're in the seam and you're a hologram and you can kind of move your hands through holograms, well, she's doing that in reality. Okay, so she has some kind of a digital symmetry going on. Okay, I don't know what they're going to call it, but fingers are digits. So, anyways, there's this quick shot of this guy on the top of the Magellan who looks like he's just he's working on the ship. He's got fisherman's clothing on. This guy's a deckhand, y'all. Literally deckhand. And right before we cut to this shot of this guy, we see Tarman with this. Actually, I think it's a left hand. I think it's a left hand that's on the in the background on the window. It's probably this deckhand's hand. We haven't really been told a lot about this deckhand. And y'all, what did I say about stories on ships and little things going overlooked that are very important? Pay attention to the deckhand. Pay attention to the deckhand. Moving on. We get a quick shot of Fatih Akin. Looks like literally just him, his model, with another character who appears to probably be that character's son. And they're talking to a ghost, a BT. Looks like they're trying to reach out and communicate with it. I'm guessing this is the child's dead mother. This is a Lisa reference. Lisa from PT. The dead mother and the father and the child. This is all PT drama being brought back up with Fatih and the son and the ghost of the mother. And of course, this probably has to do with how the doll man little thing was created. And you can see there the son is holding the doll. It's inanimate at this point, right? But we can probably guess what happens. If a BT contacts matter, void out happens. So how is his body still there? That's the question. Okay, moving on. Tomorrow and Higgs. There's a link. Okay, he confirmed it. I was right. Moving on. The shot of Sam taking his rifle, pulling it up and shooting it, that's a reference to Blood Runs Deep, Mission 18 in the Phantom Pain. When Snake goes into the cave where the children are being kept at the mine, they offer him diamonds, and they decide they've been paid to kill these children. And Snake decides, I'm not going to do that. And so on the spur of the moment, he decides he's going to take these diamonds as payment and rescue the children while faking their deaths by firing at nothing in the room. He just fires over their heads. That shot where he's firing is what's being referenced here with Sam shooting here. So, okay. And then the trailer seems to end, except it's time for Chapter 3. This is Chapter 3, y'all. We're getting Chapter 3 stuff. This is all happening because of Chapter 3. This is the third section of this video. Chapter 3 is happening. We are Evangelion up in this bitch, motherfucker. Get your shit rebuilt and rebooted all you can, because holy shit, we gotta fight some fucking Megazord BT giants at the end of time. Y'all, this is Raiden versus the Rays. It's literally the reference to the shot when Raiden is standing looking at the three Rays that he has to face. That is what this giant with the Magellan on its head is. The giant with the Magellan on his head is what I've been saying about Raiden this whole time. Raiden is a cyborg with a human head. Higgs is a cyborg with a human head. This BT with, let's say, humans in its head in the Metal Gear, which came out of the head, which comes from the cave, and Sahelanthropus in the cave, and everything I've been talking about this whole damn time. Y'all, this is Raiden and the Rays. This is Rex versus the Ray. This is the ghost of Naked Snake. He's back. I fucking called this shit. What the fuck is going on? He's the new Cliff. How did I know? How did I know? I'm just some fucking crazy schizo dude, right? No, I know how to read symbols, y'all. We got shit going down. Brush up on your Evangelion. If you haven't seen the rebuilds, if you haven't seen 3.33 and 3+1, go watch them. Because you will see this material again. Okay? Hold on tight. That's what Heartman says, and that's what I have to tell you right now. Hold on tight, everybody, because this shit, you ain't seen nothing yet. Delta.